Welcome back to the Better Men, Better Ball Player podcast. I'm your host, Trey Cobb. I want to thank you for joining us on our 95th episode of the podcast, which is still pretty wild to say, but the 95th episode is pretty awesome. We get a chance to talk to Frank Leoni. Frank Leoni is the head coach at Mount St. Mary's in Emmitsburg, Maryland, former head coach at Marymount. In his first year, he's trying to turn things around like he's done so at numerous spots that he's been at. At Marymount, they've 4 seasons with 21 wins or more, Atlantic East Conference champion, been the NCAA High Point Regional. They were the Atlantic East Coaching Staff of the Year Award. 6 years in a row, they won the ABCA Academic Excellence Award at Marymount. Former head coach at William & Mary. He averaged 28 victories a year with a top mark of 36. He had 14 players drafted by Major League clubs during his time at William & Mary. He was also the head coach at Rhode Island, took a program from 2-win team in 94 to back-to-back 30-win seasons by the end of his tenure. In 2010, he was inducted in the Rhode Island Baseball Coaches Hall of Fame. 2015, he was the Martha Vinyard Sharks Co-Manager of the Year. They play now, then was the Futures Collegiate League, now the New England League, where he was co-manager and league champs. He's led all those 3 programs for a combined total wins of nearly 600 wins at 596. He's a servant leader. He builds communities up around him, and he helps grow young men, as you'll hear on this episode, where he continues to give tangible ideas, tangible things that he does to build cultures, tangible things to help build the skill sets and changing behaviors as he continues to build programs. We discussed a ton of things from his core values, how those things were done coming into the program, coming into the Mounts, to where they're trying to, what their practices look like, and how they are in the community, doing their 7 days of service, doing their merit system, and a ton of other things that I just want to get right into because he just does a great job. Have a great conversation, learned a ton, inspired me to think about how I was doing things and what different leadership, and he talked about individual leadership and leadership at every level, and how they're building that. So did a great job with that, and really thankful, and think I'd really enjoy this conversation. So please enjoy. Get your notes ready for Coach Frank Leoni of Mount St. Mary's.
Obviously what's concerning is that the program has, struggled, over the last, 10 years or so, right? And I knew we would have this core group of guys that would be returning this year. And one of the things in my experience at URI, at William & Mary, and then building Marymount, well, not so much building the Marymount program, I guess more URI and William & Mary, is that when guys are beaten down and there's this culture of acceptance of losing, and maybe it's not so much acceptance like the guys are just okay with losing, but there's this acceptance of, well, this is the way it's always been. Here we go again. That kind of stuff that creeps in. And I know it's really hard to overcome. You can have the most talented group in the world, but if they have this lack of confidence, this dark cloud, if you will, hanging over them, that they just, no matter what they do, it's not going to be good enough to overcome and win at a high level, win at a consistent level. I knew that would be very difficult and challenging to kind of get going. Now, how do I gauge where we are now? I also knew that the guys here in this program, at least from my knowledge, and one of the first things I did, Trey, when I got the job, was I interviewed every returning player, every one of them. I gave them a list of 10 questions, ranging from things just to try to get to know them, to what their thoughts were on the program. Why is the program struggling? What do you think you do well? What do you think we can do better? Stuff like that. And in those conversations, you hear this overwhelming theme of not good enough. We're not good enough. Their self-worth was devalued, stuff like that, which is, doesn't surprise me. When you only win in 9 games a season, anybody that wants to say, and I always say this too, Trey, like anybody that wants to say, your identity is not a baseball player, your identity as well, they're full of baloney. I mean, a big part of your identity, my identity, is baseball. This is what we do. This is what we live and breathe, right? This is our lives. And it's the same for the kids that we coach. Okay. It is a big part of their identity. At the end of the day, we don't want them to feel devalued as a human being, but to ignore the fact that baseball is a big part of their identity, I think is foolish. So it didn't surprise me to hear these types of things coming from the players. So I knew that was going to be a challenge. So the other thing with bringing in as many new players as we did since July 1st, we brought in 10 new players for this year. Now, these guys have no idea what our system is, right? And the returning players have no idea what our system is. Plus, they've been beaten down. So I knew that was going to be a huge challenge to try to pull it together and make it look like something. So as we went through the fall, the way the practices went, they were sometimes, you had some guys with their mouths open a little bit. Other times they were super crisp. They got better and better and better. And guys listened and they learned and they soaked things up. It was really cool to watch. And then I watched the guys mesh together. I was really worried, Trey. I was really worried about this, that the guys that we brought in July 1st, the returning players would look at them as, oh, this is Coach Leoni just bringing in these guys, and these are going to be all his pets, and these are going to be the guys that he's going to gravitate towards, and he's going to forget about the rest of us, because they had that devalued mindset already, right? It wasn't that way. These guys saw that we looked at everybody, equally and fairly, and we were evaluating and we were trying to coach guys, everybody the same. We were trying to coach everybody up, not the same necessarily instruction, but trying to give them the same fair amount of attention as anybody else. And I think that was really cool to watch the guys that had no concept of what the Mount was about, and guys that we had, they weren't even thinking about the Mount before July 1st. Now they're integrating really well with the guys that have already been here. And the guys that were already here, it really made me feel really good about where we're going, because I could see how hungry they were for this change, how hungry they are. They're done with it. They're done with being, the doormat and being the team that everybody, whispers about behind their backs. They're done with that stuff. So they were really ready to commit themselves to something new and different. And so that's where I wasn't sure, right? I wasn't sure how this was going to happen. I wasn't sure how long it would take. And as I just said to you earlier, the proof's still in the pudding at this point, right? We've only gotten through a fall season. The fall's, it's a little bit easier in the fall, no matter what team it is, no matter what year it is, because everybody plays in the fall, right? Everybody gets their opportunities in the fall. So once the line starts getting drawn in the sand a little bit more in the spring, then things could change a little bit. However, where we are at this point, I thought this point probably would need some of the spring stuff, some of the adversity of going through that line in the sand before guys could get over things and move on. So I'm really pleased with these guys and how they've meshed together, how they've accepted one another. We just did. So one of the things we do, and we'll talk about this as part of the culture, I guess, we do I call peer reviews. At the end of the fall season, at the end of the semester, I send out basically a survey to the entire group of players and coaches, and I have them rank everybody position by position. And then I also have them rank everybody based on how well people are committed to our team values. And it really is a pretty cool thing to see how guys are viewing each other and viewing how this team is coming along. I also have them pick our Cy Young of the fall, our team MVP, our rookie of the fall. And then I also ask them for, okay, if you were to choose now, who would be your three top captain choices for the team? And as you can imagine, right, that the responses are they vary. a little bit, right? But you can see this common thread of guys are paying attention. They've seen how people are practicing. They see how guys are committed in the weight room. They see how they're committed off the field to academics and all that. And you can see it coming together. So those are the reasons why I feel good about where we are right now. But we're still a work in progress. We've got a long way to go. But definitely would rather be in this position than where I thought we would be, which is still trying to figure out, have guys try to figure out and maybe be resistant to a new system and a new culture.
I wonder if even like COVID, the short season, things like that, I wonder if that even helps you. Is it kind of like, with almost being really brand new and and everybody's kind of getting back into swing of things. But I love that, like, because Ron Eastman, a guy, coach I've had on, phenomenal coach. He does this thing called like as you see it, which is kind of like what you were talking about there. Like, how do you guys see this? Do you have them rank like? Is it when you say just according to your values? Do you also rank like your top so many pitchers, your top hitters, or is it just like here's the best one?
Yeah, no, we rank. So what I did was, for instance, for starting pitchers, what we felt like as a coaching staff is we have 8 candidates that could be starting pitchers on this team. So I just list all 8 and then they rank them from 1 to 8, 1 being the best, 8 being the least in their minds. Did the same kind of thing for relief pitchers, position by position all the way around. Once they got to the position players, they're ranking them not only on their offensive capabilities, but their defensive capabilities, base running. I told them to take into account every part of their skill set. And then also, I said, even at those positions, whether it be pitching or position player, also take into account how you feel they are committed to the team and to our overall mission as a group. And then separately, I had them rank from 1 through 36, every player on the team and their commitment to what we call ACCGL. And that stands for accountability, commitment, courage, grit, and loyalty. Those are our 5 core team values. And I have them rank it all. And it's really interesting. And you really see the guys that are at the top of that list almost correlate 1 for 1 with the guys that they chose for captains.
Sure.
Because with the captains, I didn't put any choices on there. They could have chose whoever they wanted on the team. And the guys that got the most votes, I'm pretty sure it correlated like 95% with the guys that were at the top of the ACCGL.
ACCGL, nice.
Yeah.
How did you come up with ACCGL? What's your process doing that?
So we over the course of many years, we've had different team meetings talking about what do we value, like what's most important to us, what do we want to be known as, what do we want other people to look at us and say, this is who they are. Okay, this is what we project out to the world, and so it really came about, I think, at Marymount. Some of these values were certainly ingrained at the URI program and at William and Mary, but and this is part I was going to tell you, we've taken more intentional steps once we got to Marymount. So really these intangibles, right? The culture, the chemistry, it's so intangible. How can you get your fingers on it, right? So I read a bunch of books and listened to a lot of speakers, as you have and every other good coach has ever listened to. And you start to think about, how can I formulate this in a way to pull it out? So we had team meetings, and these were the 5 core values. I think we started with 4. And then courage was added as a 5th. And so what they meant to everybody, with accountability and commitment. Accountability and commitment can almost be, there's crossovers, right, in between some of these values as well. And so these are the ones that we felt like were most important. So honestly, when we got here, we haven't gotten to that meeting yet at the Mount, because I felt like these guys really needed to understand what it was before they could participate. Same thing we did at Marymount. Like, we didn't come out year 1 right out of the gate and say, okay, let's have a team meeting and talk about what our values are. 24 freshmen weren't going to know. They don't know enough at that point to understand what's most important for a successful baseball program. So I waited a few years. And we'll wait a little while longer here at the Mount. Maybe we'll do it in the spring. There may be a time when we need to interject and say, okay, do we need to have another conversation about this to see what's more important in this situation versus somewhere else? But so far, Trey, they have gravitated to it. So the ACCGL is just a way. I told them this is an acronym for you to remember our values. So when you're walking around on New Year's Eve and you're going out, you should have these values in your mind, and that you are part of something greater than just yourself. And that's really how it came about. I should mention that we also have 5 core team principles too. And I don't know if you want me to just roll those off to you, but they are process before results, quality over quantity, everything with a purpose, be able to teach what you learn, and always compete. And so, for instance, on New Year's Eve, right, I tell them all the time, well, the night before a game, they decide to go tie one on at the local bar down the road. I said, you have a purpose behind that when you do that. Okay. What is your purpose? Your purpose is to go and get loaded the night before a game. So if that's your purpose, then how does that fit into the 5 values? We're trying to say everything we do has a purpose. So, and the guy can't answer that question. It's really helped me also to kind of have those difficult conversations, that will happen over time. And I gave you an extreme one, right, with a guy getting loaded the night before a game, because that doesn't happen that often. But still, the point is made, right, that you're going to have some difficult conversations with some guys, and oftentimes it comes down to guys not upholding these principles and values. And you can really, it gives you direction in those conversations, and it gives your team overall direction on where we're going. Like this is the foundation. This is where we start, and here's how we build out from there. So that's really where it came from.
So you said your team principles, right, are the 5 team principles, correct?
5 core principles. Yep.
5 core principles. So what's it? Can you explain, like, in your definition of the differences between the core values and the core principles?
So I think the principles are almost more action statements, if you think about it, and the values are what are reflected in those principles, if that makes sense. That's the way I kind of look at it. So for instance, process before results. We want the guys to be on a journey of trying to get better. Just keep trying to improve as both a baseball player and a human being every day. And the results are going to follow, right? Quality over quantity, right? So they're thinking about, how do I get quality reps? Not necessarily go out and get, 100 reps, 100 BP swings, if 50 of them are going to be dog, what, right? I'd rather than just take 50 really good ones and get the heck out of the cage. Right. So it's all about actions and how they're going about it. So we can go through the rest of them, but you get my point. Mm-hmm. Those are more action statements, and then the values are reflected in that with what they're doing.
Okay. So then how, what do you, because as you're building this culture, and then what are you, because we all know you have to live them each day. And like, I think what you talked earlier about, like, the shame, that's a habit, like losing because of habit, and you're trying to build better habits, basically just building these different behaviors. You're trying to change behavior, and so creating better habits. So what are the things that you are highlighting each day, or how do you highlight the principles each day, or do you highlight the values, or is it a little bit of both? Like, what are you doing to then highlight those things and showing those guys that they are buying into and doing the things that you want them to be doing?
Yeah. So the overall theme, Trey, is servant leadership, and the more we've got, and I think this is the thing that I was most concerned about with this adjustment period with the new program, is getting these guys on board with a servant's mentality. The more they have the servant's mentality, the more all these other things kind of fall into place. So that's the one thing we harp on constantly. Okay. And, kind of segueing a little bit into, it's funny. So I get this will be good conversation for you. I think I created a merit system. Okay. It's another part of our culture. It's really important. I don't remember if we talked about this, that night. I don't think we did. I think we talked about the 7 days of service, but we didn't talk about
we did.
We didn't talk about the merit system. So here's a funny story for you about my second year at Marymount. I went into North Carolina, just over the Virginia line, down by Danville, Virginia,
Okay.
just over the line. And I went recruiting. On my way back, I'm driving through these country roads. I don't even know where I was at this point. The speed limit was going from 30 to 40 to 50 to 30 to 40 to 50. It was going all over the place, right? So apparently I must have been in one of the zones where it was 30 and a sheriff's deputy was going in the opposite direction, and he spun around and came and got me, pulled me over. And he gave me a ticket. And I said, no way, I am not. I told him, I said, I'm a coach recruiting and I don't know where I am and I'm not familiar with these roads. He didn't want to hear it. He's issuing his ticket, doing his job, and that's the end of it. So I decided there's no way I'm getting this ticket. So I decided to go back to fight it in court, which was in Charlotte Courthouse, Virginia. Have you ever been there before?
No.
It is. So let me just, this will explain it to you. I pull up to the courthouse and I literally opened the door to the courthouse. It was the courthouse from My Cousin Vinny. Exactly. Like literally you open the door and you are in the courthouse. A sheriff's deputy comes up to me and says, what are you here for? I showed him the paper. He goes, all right, sit over there and no talking. That's basically the kind of situation, right? So long story short, the judge says to me, he says, okay. And he looks at my driving record, which was very good. I had the highest amount of points on my license and all that. And he's talking to the sheriff that pulled me over. He asked him how I was. He said, he was very respectful. He was fine. And he goes, okay, how would you like to get this off, expunged from your record, Mr. Leoni? Would you like to do driving school? And I'm like, yes, this is why I came here, right? I'm figuring he's going to give me this nice little cush, little online course, be done with it in no time. 8 hours in person, you have to go one day, right? So he goes out, you just have to go somewhere to a certified driving course. So I had to go in person one day for 8 hours. I'm in this hotel room, a hotel conference room in Fredericksburg, Virginia, with, I think there were like 20 other people that day, most of which were about 18 or 19 years old, gotten their first tickets, and they had first, speeding ticket, had to go. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I got a gun to my head, like, get me out of here right now. Right. So at one point during the conversation, during the class that day, the instructor starts to talk about how the DMV keeps track of points on your license. And I already knew this, but as he's talking, I'm like, that's it. I've been looking for something that we can use to quantify behavior. This is it. I whipped out a pad tray. I'm taking notes down in the middle of this class. He must have been looking at me going, this dude's like 40 something years old. He doesn't know that the DMV keeps track of points on his license. But that's what the merit, I still have the notes. That's where the merit system was built. And that was where it was born. So essentially the way the merit system works for our players is that they each, and by the way, I'm an accounting major undergrad. So
there you
go. Numbers guy.
Oh, yeah.
So I keep basically an Excel sheet for each player, and they have their own general ledger, right? And on one side of that ledger, they can earn points. And on the other side of the ledger, they can lose points. Okay. Now here's the key. Everything is tied to playing time. So for instance, in the spring, they have to maintain a +7 or higher balance in their merit account to be eligible to play in any games. If they dip below it, they're not going to play in the game. And honestly, I don't care if you're my number one pitcher or you're my cleanup hitter, you have to stay above this threshold, right? So it's a real motivator for these guys, and it gets them into this servant mindset more and more. So how do they earn points, right? There's basically 3 ways they can earn points. Academic performance. So we're looking for high academic performance. And if you know anything about our Marymount teams, we went six straight years. So the ABCA came out with an academic excellence. Yeah. I think it was 6 years ago when they came out with it. We won it 6 years in a row at Marymount. And I'll just tell you that at Mount St. Mary's, we just got a 3.27 fall GPA as a team. Okay, so it does work, right? So academics is the first one. If they get a great academic report, if they bring it to me, I give them a +1. At the end of every semester, if their GPA, I award points based on GPAs too. So if they're 3.0 or higher, they get a certain amount of points based on their GPA. If they make Dean's List, they're going to get like a +3 for that. Okay. That's one way. The next way is by service hours, right? So any community service they do, for every 2 hours that they do, they get 1 point for that. Okay. And then the third way is any other positive cultural contribution they make to our team. This has nothing to do with, getting 3 hits, 2 doubles, driving in 6 runs, has nothing to do with baseball performance, but it does have to do with attitude performance on the baseball field, or a way you pick up a teammate, or if you're somebody that typically has temper tantrum issues and you throw helmets, but now you're making improvements on that and you're not doing that stuff anymore. I'll wait and get the whole team around and recognize that player in front of the whole team and say, hey, I saw the umpire hosed you twice today and you kept it together and you just kept playing. I'm giving you a +2 for that. And you might think, well, geez, like what's the big deal? It's like a badge of honor for these guys, okay, to be recognized in that way and then to have points affixed to it. Okay. So how do they get demerits, right? If they're late, if they're, late with things, if they get bad academic reports, any other kind of off the field trouble that guys may get in, they'll get demerits for stuff like that. Okay. I think I said it was a +7 in the spring. In the fall, I give them a +1 to start each new year. It doesn't roll over into the new, into another academic year. It rolls over from the fall to the spring. So when they start next fall, they start back at a +1 again. As long as they stay in a plus balance in the fall, they're eligible all fall because, obviously they haven't had enough time to earn the points yet. Okay. And here's the cool thing with this. Okay, so it's not only about the playing time, but I also did this a few years back. I went ahead and every so often, I just send them a copy of the balances, every player from top to bottom. Don't tell them how they got there, but where they stand. And you're sitting at a +1 and I'm sitting at a +2. Next thing I know, you come in my office and say, oh, hell no, he's not staying ahead of me on that list. Coach, I'm going to do 4 hours of community service this week to get 2 more points to move ahead of you on the list. And it happens all the time. Or guys will come to me with more academic reports. They know they got a test or a paper or something coming up, and they make sure they bring it to me to get more points. It's incredible. I don't know if you knew this, but the DMV, I think, caps you at like a +3. I used to cap this thing. I don't cap it anymore. And it's because of this competition. These guys are all competitors. And again, principle number 5, always compete. It keeps them in that mindset. They're always trying to do more and more to try to elevate themselves within the merit system. I'm telling you, it's been the greatest thing that I've ever come up with. I don't care. You talk about baseball instruction, any little things I've put. This by far is the greatest thing I've ever come up with because it gets everybody in that servant mindset. What can I do to contribute positively back to the team?
I guess for me as a coach, looking at doing these things is how do you manage all of those, especially with 30 some close to 40 players, how are you managing that all the time? I'm sure it's pretty challenging.
In terms of like the different things that come up along.
Yeah, you're managing all the different points. Are you keeping them on your phone, then having to go at night to kind of tally them all up? Are you writing them down? I'm sure just the whole management of it can be a challenge. Or you probably have done. How has that changed you over the years of just being able to manage that whole ledger for yourself?
Yeah. Well, and this is one of the things I probably should have mentioned at the beginning too. And I say this I tell recruits about this when they come to visit too. I want them to know, what they're getting themselves into, but I don't walk around with a clipboard all day long saying, hey, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, you did it. We want to catch people in good acts, but you're right. There is a management piece to it. The assistant coaches definitely help. They all have if they see things worthy of merits or demerits, they have the right to send that to me. And they do help, like for all the 7 days of service events we do, for all that community service, one of the assistant coaches is responsible for tracking all of that. And at the end of the event, he sends me all the merit points that should be awarded for that. And then I just go ahead and just enter it into the Excel sheet. It really, it's not that much. And honestly, it's time well spent because this is a way that your guys know principle number one, they are going to be held accountable, and principle number, sorry, I don't know if I said principle, but value number one, accountability, but principle number 3, everything with a purpose, right? They know that these things are important to them. And now they just get themselves into this mindset, and it's stuff that they're living day after day. You asked me earlier, what things do we stress every day? Well, these things, we talk about them constantly, but a lot of times they kind of take care of themselves once the players understand how things are going to run within the program. They understand how to stay within the guidelines of the program. And then they start to see that there's a lot of value to it. And there's a lot of, it gives them the structure that they so want. And it also gives them direction. And then they understand what's expected of them, the standards that they're expected to uphold. So, like I said, it's been a game changer for us and for our program. And, the guys know, like if they fall below that +7, I mean, they find out really quickly if they're below it, and then they're doing anything they can to kind of get back above board, And here's the other thing, and I didn't mention this, and I should have. This isn't just an accountability thing. This is also a way for these guys to atone, right? So like when you and I were kids, and we played in college or played in high school, whatever, if we messed up, what did our coach make us do? He put us in a line. He made us run sprints, right? He made us run sprints till we puked, right? And I used to do that all the time too as a coach. And what I was finding is that this negative reinforcement is not working. So yeah, there's a negative piece to it with the demerits, but there's always the positive with it, right? They can always do something to redeem themselves. There's this opportunity to give back and to atone for a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. It gives them an opportunity to do something. So I ask you this, and I always say this to kids. When you were a young kid and your coach made you run until you puked, how many times you walk up to your coach afterwards and pat him on the back and say, "Thanks, coach. I really learned something from that. I got something out of it. I feel a lot better about this." No, you probably were muttering under your breath something about him. And I'm not looking for everyone to be my buddy, but at the same time, I want them to feel like they know I care, and I'm trying to give them something of value, and I'm trying to help them be better people. And I know that's what our coaches were trying to do for us too. And I'm not saying there's no negative reinforcement, but man, we haven't had to have guys do any negative reinforcement running in years. We just haven't had to, because they buy into this stuff. And the guys that buy in, you can tell too, right, Trey? When you look at this list and you see where guys' balances are, even guys that are just hovering around that +7, those are your guys that do the bare minimum, right? It shows itself right there on paper, right? And then you've got guys that are up like +20, +25. Those are guys that really want to give back. The other thing it does, for your guys that aren't necessarily going to be your top on-field performers, it still gives them a real way to contribute back to the program where they feel like they're doing something to help the team be successful. So it has so many benefits to it. And anybody that will listen to me, I would tell them, install this into your program, and then you will sleep at night.
Yeah, and I love that it's about guys that don't play all the time. It definitely gives them a big value, for sure. Will you, in terms of, is it all individually based, or you do any kind of team competitions? Some people call them boat crews, to kind of, again, reiterate a lot of these things, bring in some competition in terms of groups.
Yeah. So we do 2 team comps, but let me talk about the 7 days of service real quick and how.
Oh, let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the 7 days of service, that was born probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And essentially I read this book and it was called A Leader in Every Locker. And I'm drawing a blank at the gentleman's name. I do this every time I talk about it, but I believe his last name is Ellis. It was a tremendous breakthrough book. And essentially the thought process in the book is that you need leadership from every level within your program. It can't just be your seniors and your juniors. You've got to get some leadership from your sophomores and your freshmen, albeit not the same level of leadership as the older guys that have been around a little bit, but you still need to have it regardless. And so we were struggling at that point with a little bit of player leadership. And so I was trying to find a way of how can we develop some better leaders too. So how do we wrap this into our servant mindset? And so with the 7 days of service, what it is essentially is 7 different team community service events that we run. And so if we have a roster of 35 players, there'll be 5 players assigned to each one of the events. And those 5 players are responsible for organizing and conducting the event. Okay. Everybody, the entire team will participate in each one of the 7 events. For the most part, there may be a couple exceptions there, but the 5 players that are on that team are responsible. So I'll have a senior, junior, sophomore, freshman, there'll be guys from every class on each one of the events. And they're all responsible for some piece of that operational component to that event. And where guys learn some adversity, they learn teamwork, they learn, how to give direction, stuff like that, it doesn't come natural for everybody, like we just expect that our seniors are all of a sudden, they're going to know how to lead. Well, this gives them some real practice in how to do that. And it's really worked. We have seen, and we do some debriefs afterwards. We haven't done them this year, quite honestly, but we typically do a debrief where I give the guys a questionnaire and ask them like what went well during it. How could they improve their leadership? What adversity did they face? How did they handle it? Stuff like that. So it's been a really good project for us. And I think at Marymount, we were averaging just over 1,100 community service hours per year. We just tallied it up here at the Mount. Of course, we had more players at Marymount too. But here at the Mount, I think we just calculated, and we still have to calculate 2 more events, but I think we're at like 750 hours already of community service this fall. So again, these guys, they get it after a while, right? So that's the 7 days of service. You asked me about team comps. So at the end of the fall season, we get into the off season. We break up into 4 teams at this point, and then we play competitions. And this may not have been exactly what you were asking me, but we do all non-baseball competitions. So we started with 2-hand touch football. We did soccer. We played dodgeball. We played ultimate football. We played team handball, our version of team handball. So we had some different events that we did. And essentially what it was an hour a day, 2 games that were a half hour apiece, where team 1 played team 4, 2 played 3, and then the winners played each other, the losers played each other. We kept standings all year. And then on the last day of team comps, we had our playoffs. And we had pictures up on Twitter and everything of in fact, the last day, the championship round, the first event was knockout, and the second one was a 3-point shooting competition. And so everything we were just talking about, it brings out, and one of the things that I know we still have to work on as a team, it got better, how we compete, how we go about it. So when the what hits the fan, what are you doing to lead in those moments? Really easy to lead when everything is going well, but what are you doing when the things aren't going well? And so we see a lot of those things, and it gives me time to like call timeouts during the middle of the team comps and have like a teachable moment with some guys when I can show them that, hey, listen, you can't just sit there and bellyache at your teammates when a guy's missing an assignment, or, maybe they're not running hard enough to get back on defense or something like that. I said, you need to take the time to encourage people and to explain to them what their assignment is and how to go about getting back into the mode of competing and not to quit. You get behind, and how do you not quit? The fastest thing that I've seen, or the quickest thing I've seen with guys, is that they don't hustle anymore. When they feel like the game is lost and it's beyond reach, they stop hustling. They stop trying. They think they are, but you can just see their energy level just goes downhill. Where the team that's winning, you can always see that they still have that bounce in their step, So those are things that we have pulled from our team comps. And I think, again, it also carries over to the weight room culture that we have and guys really getting after it. We actually had to put the brakes on some of our guys. We were doing 3 days with our strength coach, and some of the guys were doing a 4th and a 5th day, which was fine, but they were kind of diverting a little bit from what our strength program was. It was almost counterproductive. So we got together. And again, one of the things I said to them was, well, how can you lead in this situation? Okay. And I took the one guy that seemed to be the driver of the bus. And I said, okay, here's a great opportunity for you. He said, well, coach, are you mad at me? I said, no, I'm not mad at you. You're trying to do more. I just want you to do it in an efficient manner. So I said, here's an opportunity for you to impact all your other teammates. I want you to get with the strength coach. I want you to sit down and I want you to come up with, what is that 4th day going to look like? What is that 5th day going to look like? These are what the workouts should look like. And he did. And he started to lead, and you started to see the guys transition. You started to see their bodies transforming a little bit here in the off season. We only had from the beginning of November to the middle of December to really kind of get into the off season mode all together. But you already started to see these guys transforming a little bit. And it's a really cool thing to see. So giving guys that perspective and those opportunities to lead are so important. That's what the team comps do. It's what 7 days of service do. And then all the other little things that come up. As a coach, you put it in your own mindset. Because I think some coaches, including myself, your first reaction when you hear, guys are going off doing their own things, almost going rogue, you're like, well, that's not commitment, right? That's not that you're breaking one of our values. When in fact, what they are trying to do is they're trying to show more commitment to making themselves better. So then you look at it differently as a coach and you help frame it differently to help them to lead each other better.
Oh, it's amazing. It's great stuff, Coach. I mean, it's amazing you're throwing all this stuff in. I'm for me just trying to wrap my head around it all. How much of the classroom is a part of what you're doing too?
You're talking about baseball
Yeah,
wise?
just like even just when you're going over these things, as you're talking about the culture and you're thinking like, is this a daily thing you're getting in the classroom before practice? Are you now still getting in the classroom, or is it like how are you able to discuss all these things and get people to understand them?
Yeah. So we did do a few classroom sessions in the fall where we were physically in a classroom, and I'm a big PowerPoint guy, so I have different presentations that I'll show them. But due to COVID and there was some other things as we were trying to get acclimated this fall, I shouldn't blame this all on COVID. How the Mounts split up, right? So we have the academic side on one side of Route 15. And we've got the athletic side on the other side. So what we honestly started to try to do was try to do a little bit more explanation on the, at the field explanation, some demonstration, try to talk through some things and then run through some drills. There's no question in my mind we're going to get more to classroom stuff again in the spring. We did our overall team presentation. We were talking about the culture stuff. In fact, it was our very first team meeting. It was like a 40-minute slide presentation. And I said to them about 30 minutes in, I said, did you guys notice we haven't talked about baseball at all yet? Mm-hmm. And they looked at each other like, yeah, like we weren't expecting this, But we also did one for hitting with our hitting system. We'll do others. I have a base running one and some other things, bunt defenses, relays, stuff like that. We have some of those things. So yes, Trey, it is very important. I'm trying to figure out how we can do this at the Mount. We're talking about creating a team room at the Mount for us to use that with on the athletic side. We're also in the process of building. Well, not build. It's not happening. We're in the process of working towards raising the money to build an indoor hitting team facility right behind our first base dugout. When that gets built, it's going to be exactly what you're talking about. I mean, we're going to have a lot of classroom time. Tim Corbin is probably the guy that I heard that did the, really focuses and is so determined that this is the right way to go. And as the more I listen to Tim about it, even the most basic stuff to get guys on the same page before you go on the field and actually try to execute these things is so important. So any coach out there that could do that, I would I would say place a lot of value on it. Get in the classroom, spend that time with your players. It's worth I would keep it short.
Mm-hmm.
Players' attention spans are pretty short nowadays. I think they've always been, but they seem like they're getting a little shorter now. 20, 30 minutes, get in there, have conversation, talk, have a couple of points you want to make, then get out on the field and go execute it. I think that's really important to do.
Cool. Oh man, so you kind of mentioned a little bit of your hitting stuff. If you want to get on that side, if you want to go on that side of the ball here, I know like you really just did. It was amazing and stuff with the culture, and like you said, I think that's always the big challenge of that you mentioned is how to make it tangible. How do we make it so we all know what we can, concrete, and it seems like you're just doing a great job between the merit system, your days of service, and the acronyms, making it known. It's just part of your daily life. So I think that was the challenge of what I really like to hear of the clarity of it, where you're making it more tangible, which is really, I'm sure you didn't start there. That's for sure.
No, not at all. Not at all. This is, again, I also believe in being a lifelong learner, right? Which is why we do stuff like this and we listen to podcasts and things like that, because there's always something that you can learn and improve upon. So, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be other things I'm going to install or come up with at a later time. But no, I mean, Trey, it was, I trudged through it a little bit, especially as a young coach, and you got your blinders on, right? And it's just win, 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 win. And a lot of times you forget about the people. And we are in a people business. And the more I've been better, I can't speak for everybody because I'm just not. There's just so many other baseball coaches out there that are better than me. They're just a better baseball coach. I mean, I don't hold any grudges on that. Like, I understand that, but for me, the more I have focused on relationships and culture, and the X's and O's will take care of themselves. The baseball side, I think we're good coaches. I don't mean to say that I don't think we're good baseball coaches. We are, but the more I focus on just the baseball side, I feel like my teams don't improve as much as they do when we focus a lot on the culture side. And even the way we practice, Trey, if you come to watch us practice, you'll see a culture in action. With the way we go about things. So, but yeah, X's and O's are only going to take you so far. And I always say this, I think I say it probably 99% of the time on recruiting visits. If a player doesn't invite me to their wedding when they graduate, I failed that player. That's how I feel. I didn't always feel that way. Mm-hmm. I honestly didn't. I didn't even think to feel that way for a long time in my coaching career, but that's the way I have felt for a long time now.
It's big time, coach. When you talk about I guess a practice, so looking at a practice, what would they see? What would you can you give me specific examples of, like you said, the culture in action?
Yeah, so it'll start from the very first thing we do. We have a very specific throwing program that we do every day. We do our progressions every day, and you will see it in action. You'll see these guys leading each other through each step of that progression, whether it's the catchers are a little different than the infielders. The infielders are a little different than the outfielders. The pitchers are different than the position players. But you'll see them going through each step of the progression every day and leading each other through that. And not only leading, there may be one infielder that's kind of taking charge of the whole infield group and keeping everybody on the same progression so that, one group's not done, 5 minutes before the rest of the group kind of thing. But even within that, when they're partnered up, you'll see partners talking to partners about how they're going about things and things we harp on, whether it be with footwork or glove presentation or whatever it may be. They're helping each other kind of work through each one of those steps. From there, it depends on what the practice is. Typically, our practices will have some type of skill breakdown, more of a it's still group, but it's more individually based, whether it be hitting or defensive work or some type of base running. And then at the end of practice, we're always going to try to do something that's going to be up tempo. Whether it's a BP on the field with base running, including live situations, or it could just be a base running drill. We do a base running rotation drill that, one of the things I think our players would tell you is that we don't need to do, like, we don't run foul poles or sprints after practice or anything. Like, we don't have to. They're going to get so much conditioning within the practice that they should be keeping up with their conditioning. No other way to say that. So, but that's what it would kind of look like. And, some of the hitting stuff we would do, in our tunnel cages, and then some of it may be on the field. There would be, we'll do other team drills. Like this one drill that we love, it's a very up tempo drill for pitchers, catchers, and infielders. We call it our 3 lines of pitchers drill. And it basically encompasses bunt coverages, comebackers, covering first base, steals, tags at bases. I mean, and it's all happening rapid fire. Within 15 minutes, they're probably getting, 50 to 75 quality reps within 15 minutes. And, those are the types of things that we like to do. We try to put more into the game speed drills. And then the individualized drills, they're important because we're trying to break stuff down. But, even when you look at hitting, we started to talk about the hitting system, right? So we have what we call swing practice and hitting practice, right? And we think they're 2 different things. Swing practice is mechanics, how we're going to work through your mechanics of your swing. And then there's hitting practice where we actually have to work through, our bats and how we're going through our different hitting plans, we call them coverages, how we're working through our different coverages at the plate. And they're very different. You can sit and you can work on your swing all you want. I make this analogy, right? Put aside steroids for a minute. I still think Barry Bonds is the greatest hitter I've ever seen in action. But what would have happened if you put a blindfold on Barry Bonds and sent him to the plate? He wouldn't have been so successful. And I think oftentimes he had great mechanics, when he, think about the year he hit 73 home runs. I think he walked over 200 times that year. He probably got 1 pitch to hit every game. And he was so good. Obviously, steroids were helping him a little bit, obviously, but he was so good mechanically that he got that 1 pitch and he didn't miss it. He was able to barrel the ball up, right? But your mechanics aren't going to be so good if you don't have a good plan. Like, I would rather have a guy that has, a slightly above average swing, but really knows how and has discipline and understands how to approach his at bat, rather than a guy that has the prettiest swing in the world, who has no plate discipline, swings at the wrong pitch all the time. I would take my chances with the guy that knows how to approach his at bats. So those are things we work on. We work on them every day. Every day in practice, there's a component to our practice where we're working on, what is a pitcher trying to do to get us out, and how do we approach our at bat so that we can counter that.
And I think just from your time at URI and knowing there, and then as the hitting system, is it change each year? Or are you really recruiting to his hitting system? Just wondering how that has changed through the years.
So it definitely has evolved. I mean, the hitting system that we used at URI, there are pieces of it that are still in. And it's interesting you even said that too, because we were struggling offensively at Marymount a few years ago. We were on our Florida trip, and on the day off, the kids all went to the amusement parks and things like that in the Orlando area. And I stayed back at the hotel, and I went back and researched through all my stuff on my computer. And I went back to a lot of the URI stuff that was really getting back to basics. And I've made sure that ever since that day that we've kept some of those basics in the system as we've moved forward. Really a lot of it, Trey, was founded in timing issues that we were having. And we were trying, what I did to at URI was really simplified a lot of the timing, so that hitters weren't putting themselves in bad positions late, in a pitch. So we've incorporated some of that stuff, and then we've really kind of gone gone a lot further. I mean, there's been so many advances in biomechanics and the way that, the way the body operates. And so Coach Tarr is outstanding, our hitting coach. He is really good at teaching movements, and Coach Moore's really good, our pitching coach, at teaching movements. And so those are things that we really kind of focus on. And so when we're looking at hitters and we're looking at guys to recruit, we are watching the way their body works. Again, we could have somebody that's maybe a little bit, he's not developed physically yet, but you can see that the potential is there to get more physical. How's his body movement? And there's, a kid just came to my mind. There's a left-handed hitting middle infielder that I saw on video just before the Christmas break. And I called over Coach Tarr. I'm like, look at this kid. Like, I want you to wrap your brain around what you're watching right now. Like the way this guy's moving right here, the way he uncoils, the way he is able to leverage into the ground and use his midsection, create so much bat speed with his hands. And he's not a very big kid. I wasn't a very big guy either. I'm not, but I was able to generate a lot of bat speed and hit for power in college at the Division I level because I was able to leverage all of that stuff. And I didn't know what I was doing back in the day, and nobody taught me that way. And it took me a long time to say, well, what is it that I'm looking for? You can see when somebody has bat speed, right? You can physically just watch that. But how do they create that? And some guys are creating it just because they're stronger and they're a little bit more advanced at the high school level than other guys they're playing against. Whereas other guys, you can see that they have more longevity in their swing, right? They have from the ground up able to create that energy. And once they put on the strength to go with it, man, there's no stopping that guy. So that's what I'm looking. I'm looking for, body. We have certain things like how do the guys, there's the big thing nowadays. You hear a lot about hinging your hips, right, to load. So it's not a common thing that you see in high school hitters. You don't see it a lot. But more so for me is how do they unwind coming through the swing? And if the hips and the lower half are really leading the swing or not. So those are the guys that I'll really look for. And then the other part of that would be how well they can control the barrel of the bat.
And that's what I was thinking, like prior to like what you said about taking less of a swing for a guy that more can hit. How, like, what are you looking for there? Like, how do you see that kind of kid where like, oh yeah, maybe his hips aren't doing that, but like, how are you noticing like if he's a better hitter than he does of a swing?
Yeah. And the other thing too with that, is okay. So maybe he's not, his hand-eye coordination may be so off the chart. I'll give you a great example. You wanted a name. I'm going to give you a name right now. He's the head coach at Good Counsel, Tim Park. Do you know Timmy?
I don't. Okay.
So Timmy played for me at William & Mary. He was an All-American. So he was a junior, one of the only junior college transfers, I think, in the 7 years that I was at William & Mary. We got a few, but he was one of them. And he was an All-America for us. Should have been a draft guy. Still to this day, he was a little undersized as a catcher, and I think that's why he didn't get drafted. But he was just, you can look up his stats when we get off here, and you'll be blown away. His hand-eye coordination was incredible. Would I teach players to try to swing like him? No. Absolutely not. But he was such a smart hitter, and his hand-eye coordination was so good, and his hands were so quick that he could be really successful. So when I go out and I watch a high school guy, or even when we recruited Tim, and I see that there's that potential for that, we also look at it as, okay, are there things there that we can correct? Are there things there that can we add value to this guy? Can we help him get to another level? Or and if it is, the answer is yes to that, we look at that guy as a guy that has that higher ceiling, that we can help improve. If it's a guy that we feel like, I don't know that it's going to take a lot to maybe get him to understand some of the movements, then maybe we shy away from that guy a little bit. But there's no doubt about it. We're gravitating more towards guys that are more physical because we feel like their bodies can handle the load that we're gonna try to put on them. But the guy I was saying earlier, the left-handed hitter that I saw recently, he swings like he's probably 6'2", 200 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And he's probably 5'9", 5'10", 160 pounds.
Mm.
So, if he can put on some weight, and do some things and get a little more athletic overall, because his body physically can't handle some of the load. You can tell. I watched him take ground balls too, and he's a little stiff in some of his actions when he takes ground balls. He's going to be a hell of a player. He's going to be a really, really good player. So, I don't know if he's listening to this podcast, but he's coming to our camp in a few weeks, and I'm really excited to work with him. So
good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So, I just, man, we're an hour in already. I wanted to just give you a chance to say, is there anything maybe that you you wanted to get in the 7 days of service? Is there anything, in your wheelhouse that you feel you guys are doing these great things that you would like to cover? You want to get into that we haven't yet?
Yeah, no, I think we've done a pretty good job of talking through quite a few things here today. I would just stress that, to anybody that cares to listen, the more you focus on, creating the culture, whatever it is. And I'm not saying that the way we do it is the right way. It's working for us. But come up with something that works for you, and then try to, ingrain that in everything you're doing, whether it's what you talked about earlier with classroom sessions, to on the field practice, to the way you go about it in games. There are other things that we do. And let me just say this, since you asked, a couple of the other things we do for positive reinforcement. We have this other thing called game changers. And this has everything to do with how we're playing the game. It's a style of play on the field. And so there are various categories that we're looking to hit. And what we have found over probably a 8-year period now is that when we win game changers, we usually win the game. It's 99.9% effective that we're going to win the game if we win that category. But alongside that is that when the players are hitting these categories individually, they start earning awards for that. Okay. And how do we do the awards? You know how the Ohio State football team does the Buckeyes on their helmets?
Yeah.
So we do stickers for these guys to put on their batting helmets for the position players. And then pitchers, when they hit things, they get rewarded with pitchers batting practice. And they love, how pitchers are, right? They all think they can hit. Well, they get to take rounds of batting practice as a reward for hitting these different milestones. In addition to that, have you ever read the book Can't Hurt Me?
By David Goggins?
David Goggins, yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, so you remember the part in that book where he talks about your mental cookie jar? When you accomplish things that you didn't think you could accomplish, you put a cookie in your mental cookie jar. Well, I said, okay, how can we make that tangible? So we created an actual cookie jar. And what we do at the end of every week in the spring, we gather around as a team, and we talk about the really cool things we did in the past week. It could be during the games. It could be something during practice. It could be someone making one of those positive cultural contributions, whatever it is. Guys nominate, and then they get to write with a blue Sharpie on the cookie and put it in the cookie jar. Well, here's a funny story for you. When we first did this, I think we've only had the cookie jar now for about 4 years. So about 4 years ago, we actually were using Chips Ahoy chocolate chip cookies. The guys were writing on the back of these things and putting them in the cookie jar. We got up to Philadelphia one year to play. I think we were playing Newman, and we bring the cookie jar physically and put it next to our helmet and bat rack. So our guys see it. It's a symbol of everything that we're capable of doing to remind them, right? I look in the cookie jar before the game, and there's only like 2 cookies left in there. Now I'm pissed. I'm like, okay, these guys aren't taking this seriously. Blah, blah. So I went over to a couple of our pitchers, and I said, okay, I need you to do some recon and find out what happened to the cookies. Well, lo and behold, our bus driver dug into our cookie jar, and he started to eat our cookies. And so this guy's going to drive us back 5 hours to D.C. after we play a doubleheader, and he's eating cookies with blue Sharpie on them. So we're wondering if this guy's poisoned at this point, right? You can't make this stuff up. So anyways, long story short, we have since stopped using real cookies. I go to like Michael's or one of those, artsy stores, and I buy like these wooden chips that are round that look like cookies, and the guys write on those and put them in there. I get some that are shaped like baseballs, some shaped like stars, whatever. If they're a really big thing that we had happen, like if a guy gets player of the week in the conference, we usually give them like a big cookie so they can write that stuff down, and they write whatever they want on the cookie, and they put the date, and then they put it in the cookie jar. And then again, there'll be times when we're in the dugout and you'll see our guys will go over, they'll go over and they'll rattle that cookie jar.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, remember, this is what we're capable of. So, that's another, little thing. I'm always looking for ways to, it's funny, right? Sometimes I feel like I've turned into a kindergarten teacher, but I'm looking for ways to reward, because it really does go a long way with these guys.
Well, you praise what you want, you know what I mean? You praise what you want, and that's repeated behavior. Repeated behavior is rewarded behavior, and absolutely, man. It's just that we're all just trying to change behaviors. It's what you're trying to do from the get-go, and you're reinforcing good habits. And like you said from the get-go, changing the bad habits and changing the shame that they had, and and you're encouraging them to do the positive things, and seeing those things, because, oh man, it's just so great. But I love what you said. It's, again, the tangible, concrete things. That's what I've always been hung up on. I think Brian Kane, I think he's got a little niche because he found ways to make it tangible. People can say it all the time. It's mental. Like, well, what does that mean? It's mental. Like, what does that mean? Like, what are these behaviors? Well, how can we make them tangible? I think we've done an awesome job, man. It's been really great to hear. Really appreciate all the really tangible, great stuff, man. The cookie jar, that was really great. Oh, real quick about the game changers. I'm wrapping things up here. I want to respect your time, but game changers. Can you give us a specific example of a game changer? Are you talking like maybe like a dive and play, like late to get a guy? You bring a guy on, like let's say late in the game, he gets a big strikeout, like those kind of things.
So yeah, it's things that we feel like will change the game, right? That can change the course of the game, change momentum. So any 2-strike hit, 2-out RBIs, home runs are on there. The leadoff guy getting on in an inning. For pitchers, you keep the leadoff batter off. Pitchers, 15 or less pitches in an inning, 1, 2, 3 innings. Inherited runners for relief pitchers, keeping inherited runners from scoring, stuff like that. Head turning plays, so a plus defensive play, any plus defensive play, things like that. I haven't given you every category, but sometimes those evolve too, Trey, by the way. Yeah. And I think for any coach, whatever you deem important for your team to help, like I said, create momentum, change momentum, whatever it is. I think those are things important. And here's another one: base hit bunts. Anytime a guy reaches base on a base hit bunt, anytime he gets hit by a pitch. So again, you're encouraging. It's a cultural thing, right? So instead of trying to jump out of the way of a pitch, are you going to wear the pitch to help your team win? Things like that. So those are the things that we deem important, and we reward our guys for it.
And so then I'm understanding it like, so you just basically have a running list of all these things, and you just kind of have a big total number at the end of the game.
Yes.
Of all the game changers. So like you could be like 30. Do you have a goal, or you just say, hey, we're just try to get as many game changers as we can?
Just as many as you can. And we chart it for the opposing team too. So we do it.
So you win the game changer wars, basically what it is.
Exactly. So we chart it individually for all of our guys, for each one of our players, and then have a team total at the end. And then for the other team, we just chart each category in total for them, not by player. And then whatever their total is. So if we win that battle, like you said, then we won the game changers for that game. And then on top of that, I also give them the helmet stickers and the batting practice for the different milestones. I think for every 5 game changers, they get a helmet sticker.
Okay.
Yeah. And for like every I think it's for every 10 points for the pitchers, they earn a round of batting practice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
A lot of management, a lot of time in the Excel spreadsheets at night after
Yeah.
games and practice, coach.
Oh yeah. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Loving the Excels, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. I'm trying to streamline it a little bit. I've got, a couple of injured players, and I we do these other, so everybody does QPAs too, right? Or quabs. Ours is called QPAs, and for us, we've got different categories, and we track hard hit balls and all that. But I actually was able to figure out through a good friend of mine who used to be one of my assistant coaches. He told me that he created an app through Excel, which actually tabulates all this stuff and spits it out for you in another sheet. And he gave me the basics, and I went, and I haven't gotten as sophisticated as he has with it, but I've figured out a way to do it, and we did it all fall, and it saved a lot of time. It saved an awful lot of time.
Have you looked into John Sheehan's hitting approach app?
No, I haven't.
Oh yeah, because it'll bring in all of those things, and it will be swing decisions, but then it actually says quality plate appearance. And though at the end of the game, the kids go in there and they have to click on the things if it was a quality plate appearance with the pitches, and basically do what you're saying. So then he can go in there and then he gets a coach's report, and he can go in there and talk to them about their bats and what they'd sell and this and that. So yeah, that would be a really great thing to look into. It's really good, and it's $250, I think, for the team.
That's awesome.
That's it. It's really good. And Sheehan, being the hitting guy that he is all behind it and helped. They had the guy created, so it's awesome. So I think if that's what you're looking for, it sounds like that's what it is, and that will help, I guess, eliminate the QPA stuff that you do. The game changer stuff will still be yours that you'll have to do, but at least that could take off your plate with the QPA stuff. And the kids actually then get also a report at the end. They have to go in, they can do it right on their phone, finish that up, and then super. Yeah, I'm taking it to the summer when I go and just trying to learn from that. I'm doing it. So
you're talking about Coach Sheehan at Millersville, right?
Yes, Coach John Sheehan from Millersville. Yeah, great dude.
He beat me to the punch. I was going to try to create an app someday. He beat me to the punch.
Yeah, he just got it, and then they're looking into going to go into pitching and everything. Right now, it's just hitting. And he basically wants to eliminate all his charts. Is basically kind of like you said. You're just trying to find some way of how can I eliminate that time after the game, like all you're doing, I guess, like I saying, like in back of my mind, when I'm hearing you say these things too, as a coach, I'm like, all right, then I'm going to that's great. And then I'm like, I got to go back home and get these things done. Like I got to tabulate all these things, make sure I'm all right. And it's great. Like you said, you have good assistants that really do that. Cause I know how extremely valuable that has to be for you.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Yeah, it does. I will just say this. It does help me to kind of, put a bow on top of the game at the end of the day. It gives me a chance to analyze it by looking at some of these key things where I think are important and where we can make improvements. So I'll just leave it at that.
Coach, what's the best way for guys to get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing, or maybe reach out to you about, the merit system and something like that?
Yeah, anybody can email me at any point. My email address is F as in Frank .D as in David .Leoni LEONI at msmary.edu.
Fantastic. And now you talk about Twitter too. What is your guys' Twitter handle you like to follow?
So my personal Twitter handle, or my coaching Twitter handle, is at Coach Leoni. And then we are the team's Twitter is at MS. I'm trying to think now. MSM_BSB, I believe is what it is.
At MSM_BSB.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Coach, I appreciate it, man. It was awesome.
I appreciate you, Trey, and I hope everybody has a great rest of their holiday season. This was awesome. Thank you.
Great stuff by Coach Leoni. I just want to thank him, and also want to thank our sponsor, Netting Professionals. Netting Professionals are improving programs one facility at a time. Netting professionals specialize in design, fabrication, and installation of custom netting for backstops, batting cages, dugouts, scoreboards, BP screens, and ball carts. They also design and install digital wall padding, windscreen, turf protectors, dugout benches, dugout cubbies, and more. Netting professionals continue to provide quality products and services to many recreation, high school, and college fields, facilities, and stadiums throughout the country. Contact them today at 844-620-2707 or info@nettingpros.com. Visit them online at www.nettingpros.com or check out Netting Pros on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for their latest products and projects. Again, thank you to Will Meyer. Thank you to the guys at Netting Pros. Love being part of the family. Coach Leoni with some great stuff about his merit system, diving into specifics of the merit system, how to get points, earn points, made to be at least a 7 to even participate. His core values versus his core team principles, and how those came about, and how those behaviors are really reflecting within the action statements, process before results, quality over quality, everything with a purpose, and always competing. That's what his program is about, what he's about. And as he knows, you can hear that he says, if we get better as a person, the results will come. An overall theme is servant leadership, as they have a servant mentality. They're bringing in their community service and putting kids in situations to plan and organize those, which I thought was interesting. And yes, that's all college students. And would people have to monitor that from lower levels? Absolutely. But at least that's the idea of how can we do that. And that's great, but put that into what we did. Because as Coach said, it's a matter of what each of us deem important, what each of us do things, and how we can create these things for us, make them part of who we are. But Coach really just gave us some great ideas, great information, and I really appreciate him. I really appreciate you guys for listening, hanging on with us, and I hope you enjoyed Frank Leoni from Mount St. Mary's. Contact him again. Send his email f.d.leoni@msmary.edu. Follow him on Twitter at Coach Leoni or at MSM_BSB for their Mount St. Mary's Twitter handle. So, thank you guys. Appreciate you. Netting Pros, thank you guys. And until next week, keep getting better.